All right, hello everyone. I'm Isaiah Cartwright, or Izzy, and we're going to talk a little bit about the Warrior today, and I'm also going to talk a little bit about kind of base stats and how they all kind of work together, especially with the Warrior. So I think the first big thing is I'm just going to quickly go over all the stats here and kind of how they function, and then we'll go into a little bit more of stat combos and how those kind of relate and what are some good ones for the Warrior, and then as well as some good rune combinations, what food buffs that I like to use a lot, and then I can move on and I'll start talking about some traits and skills. So I think first big thing, we're just going to do a quick rundown of the stats here. Power is really base damage. It'll just, the more power you have, the more damage you have. And so it's a really simple stat to get your damage up whenever you're using weapons that are not condition damage weapons. I'll kind of go over the relationships to all these things a little bit more. Precision, this is where you get your crit chance from, which matters a lot. The more power you have, and the more crit you have, the more crit damage you will do. We have toughness. Toughness is how much armor, how much defense you have. Out of the box, the Warrior has more health and toughness than a lot of other professions, and lets them be durable and stay in melee combat a little bit longer. Vitality gets your health, increases how much max health you have. Every point of vitality increases 10 points of health. Condition damage, this will increase the damage of all of your conditions. Different conditions have kind of different multipliers on how much condition damage will affect it. And so depending on what types of builds and things you're putting together, the more condition damage will give you different breakpoints of damage. Boon duration. Boon duration is going to increase all of the boons that you apply. The Warrior does quite a bit of sharing of boons, and so boon duration can really help you out. Crit damage. Crit damage increases how much damage you do whenever you land a critical hit. This can be really important with precision, with fury, or other type of abilities. Agony resistance. This is for the fractal dungeons and high-level kind of creatures inside there. They'll help you resist some of their mean and evil attacks. Attack. This is sort of a number variation based on power and weapon damage. Critical chance, this is really changing via precision how much critical chance. At level 80, every 21 points of precision will increase your critical chance by 1%. You start at 4%, and things like Fury will increase your thing by 20, and so critical chance is really important. Armor, this is a combination of your armor on your items and your toughness. And so the more of those things you have, the less raw damage you will take from creatures. Condition damage will go right through toughness, so it's something to keep in mind if you're fighting things with a lot of condition damage or in an area with that your toughness is not going to do anything for you. Health, when this hits 0, you die. So having a higher health can help you survive longer time so that you can get to your heal skills or other things like that. Condition duration, this will increase the duration of your conditions, fairly simple. And healing power. Healing power will increase the heal amount of your heals or any skill that does healing. There's kind of a multiplier on each skill, and like condition damage, the effect of healing power will be different on every skill or ability. Your Warrior burst damage, this is kind of the Warrior's special ability, and it's only increased by traits. And that will make your F1 skill do more damage. And then Magic Find. Magic Find will allow you to find rarer things off of killing creatures. And so those are kind of the base stats. So I'm going to go over a few important relationships on those stats. Really, the first one we're going to talk about is the damage relationship. Power, precision, and crit damage all kind of intertwine in order to make your damage. And you shouldn't forget, if you're kind of going with a raw damage build, don't forget about any of those stats because they all will increase each other in different ways. The higher power you get, the more your crit damage or your crit percentage can really come into play because your crits at base are 50% of your damage. And so at around 2,000 power and around 50 crit damage, precision starts to actually become better than power for you because it will get you more damage overall. And so as you kind of work between these two, you can kind of balance your character out and get more damage in different cases. And so always kind of look at the relationships between your power, your precision, and your crit damage when you're making kind of a raw DPS build. And so the next kind of relationship between stats that's really important is your condition duration and your condition damage and precision. So a lot of condition damage type of builds will rely on procs, like this one here, which is, gets you bleed on crit. The warrior also has a bleed on crit trait, and so your crit damage can actually increase how often you're applying your bleeds. And so that becomes important as well. And then critical damage will just increase the raw amount of damage that you do, and then your duration can multiply on top of that by making the conditions last longer, and so all the damage that you do will kind of multiply together. And then the last one is toughness, healing, and vitality. So kind of the higher toughness you have, the less damage you will overall take. And then the more healing you have, the more health you'll get back. And so if you're taking less damage and you're healing for more, they kind of have a nice relationship in that you will get more health and be more survivable the more you have those things together. And then health will kind of buy you time based on that factor. And so those three things kind of work together to make your total defense. So the types of builds that I like to build for warrior, I'm going to just kind of talk about the item pieces. My normal kind of base thing is I like to go off of the knight set. This is primary toughness, and then the second ones are power and precision. And this is really important to me because as a warrior I like to kind of take the brunt of the PvE, try to get the aggro a little bit more, survive a little bit longer, and so having the higher base toughness is really good. Also, when you're looking at what you're kind of building, always keeping into mind your different conversion traits. And so for this particular one, we have toughness goes into power. And so that can be really important for getting your toughness to increase your overall damage. There's also a trait in the power line that can convert power to vitality. And so those things can really get you more benefit out of every point when you're interacting with it, depending on how you're kind of setting up your character. And so when I really like to make a DPS or damage build, kind of raw damage, I really like to try to maximize power, crit, and crit damage. And so you do that a lot by the Berserker's armor. And so this one, let me find it in my mix of stuff here, if I actually made one. Looks like I did not. And so Berserker's armor is primary power, secondary precision, and then it has crit damage. And like I said, those things kind of work together really well. When I'm doing that, I like to use divinity runes a lot. Divinity runes give you kind of plus to all stats. This can be really helpful because it gets you a pretty good amount of crit damage. You get about 12%. But then it also gets you some precision and some power, and so those things work together. And then, all the other stats kind of help out as well. Other things I like to do are Rune of the Ogre. This is raw power. You get a little bit of crit damage, and then you get a base damage multiplier on top of everything. And so that can really help rune set-wise. And then another one is Rune of Air. It gets you more raw crit damage, which is a lot stronger when you're using higher hitting multipliers. But this one also gets you a nice proc that hits back and does lightning, which can be effective and nice. And so those are kind of some of the runes that I like to set up on damage. When you're doing raw damage for the warrior, really your best bets are Greatsword and Axe. Those things kind of deal out a lot of damage, and Rifle is also decent for your ranged weapons. And so kind of using those things together can really maximize your damage potential. Condition damage, the warrior actually has some interesting condition damage builds. A lot of it working with the bow and the sword. And so kind of one of the good things the warrior can do trait-wise is you can have basically a 50% increase to your bleed durations with the deep cuts trait, and that also gets you a 33% chance on bleeds. And so just based when he's kind of building a condition damage character, those two things can really work together really well. And then on top of that, the bow, which is one of the strong condition damage weapons for him, so it's a lot easier to trigger those procs, and giving yourself a bleeding proc on there can really increase your overall damage. One of the big skills that's kind of fun to use with this type of build is pin down. It has a huge amount of bleed, and it also passes through targets. So if you target something in the back of a huge crowd of monsters, you'll do a bunch of bleeds on a whole lot of creatures. And so sword also ends up doing a whole lot of condition damage, because all of its abilities have a lot of bleed into them with the skill 1. And then the flurry ability also has some bleeds, and so it can be a really fun condition damage build. When I build condition damage builds for the warrior, I kind of have a couple different routes that I like to go. One is just the carrion set. This is like raw increase of your condition damage. And you can run that in a couple different ways. One way you can run it is you can stack up on bleed duration runes. And so in this case, I'm running the Afflicted, the Centaur, and the Crate, which give you 15% on all of these, just straight to your bleeds. It can kind of be a bit of overkill, especially if you take a little bit of strength and bleed duration. You'll have really long-lasting bleeds, but it's almost a little bit too much. So sometimes you don't take all of these, but only 2 of them.